Welcome to the Team Engagement Podcast, where leaders of teams share their insights. We discuss 6 questions in 9 minutes because leaders know how to be concise. Let's go ahead and get started with our guest today. First question, in a few sentences, tell us who you are and what you do.
My name is Cagle. I am the community editor for Data Science Central, which is a community site specifically oriented towards data science, artificial intelligence, graph technologies, and knowledge engineering.
Deep stuff then.
It can be, especially when you're wading through it and you're trying to find the top somewhere. Then it gets just very deep.
Very deep. Well, very good. Question number 2, what's the best thing about working with a team?
Um, I think there are several aspects to it, but uh, in general, any team that you have basically gives you the ability to project power.
Hmm.
And by that, I mean not necessarily, managing or, playing power games, but the ability to basically accomplish more complex tasks than you can accomplish when you're basically one person working independently. It also provides a way of ensuring that you have multiple viewpoints, and that in turn basically makes sure that the nature of the product that you are creating, regardless of what that is, has been vetted and seen from different perspectives. And by that, gives you the ability as a team leader to not only accomplish a particular goal, but also to make sure that that goal is something that isn't biased specifically towards one person's view or one person's vision.
Those are great comments. I really like, especially at the beginning there when you were talking about how teams project power and there's more that they get out of being a team than they would individually. I think those are great comments. Question number 3, I hear from other leaders of teams that it can be a challenge to get team members engaged. Tell us your thoughts.
Well, realistically, engagement comes primarily when people feel that what they're putting into the efforts of the group are worthwhile.
Mm.
If you basically get involved in a project and you feel that what you're doing is not going to make a difference, after a while you lose interest. I don't care whether you're being paid or whether you're a volunteer. The idea essentially is that when you engage within a group, when you engage within a team, you are basically saying, look, I'm bringing something to the table, and if what I'm bringing is not going to help accomplish those particular goals, then why am I doing this? What am I getting out of it? So I think that when you're dealing with engagement, that really kind of comes down to making sure that everyone is gaining as much in the efforts, and not just financially, but in terms of interest, in terms of potential uh, fame or similar process, and oftentimes even just the opportunity to do cool stuff than they would if they were engaged in something else. And I've seen too many teams fail because that underlying objective gets lost.
Great comments. You're right. It can get lost, and I really like your perspective on helping everybody feel like, regardless of the compensation or anything else, that there's a sense of worthwhile purpose to what they're doing. And those are great comments. Question number 4, what other piece of advice do you have for leaders of teams?
Um, I think it's important for a leader to understand that there are different kinds of leadership. That when you go in, your one role that a leader has is to basically act as a coordinator to make sure that people are communicating with one another. A leader who basically sees their team as something subordinate to them doesn't understand their job description. Realistically, the purpose of a leader of a team is not to make sure that the team actually gets things done so much as is to make sure that there is communication between the team members and between the team members and between the team and the outside shareholders or stakeholders in the who are engaged in the product and the team is creating. So realistically, when you look at good leadership, it's not at all surprising to find that the most effective leaders are also the ones that are most effective at being able to communicate, to listen to what their people are saying, to ensure that there are adequate channels of communication, and to make sure that the things that those people are saying are getting heard.
Mm.
I think it's very important.
Great advice. Great advice. I really like how you mentioned coordination, but that it goes beyond that, that there's individuals involved on the team. Thank you for sharing that. Question number 5. What other successful leaders of teams would you like to recognize that have had a positive influence in your life?
Um, that's a tough one. I I think that the I've been involved in a lot of standards organizations and standards groups, and oftentimes the people who are essentially the editors or the coordinators of those particular groups um, are they're often unrecognized for the sheer amount of work that they do. I've worked with the W3C when it was setting web standards, with XML, with a lot of the work that's going on right now with semantic web, with other areas along those lines. And in most cases, you know, those people, those team leaders, are people who generally are responsible for making sure that the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, but also that, as I indicated earlier, that the message that the team itself is attempting to shape, the thing that they're attempting to shape, um, that there is a clear underlying path there. And I know a lot of people, so I'm not going to give a particular person's name. But I do think that in general, when you look at those people who are involved in establishing standards, oftentimes their roles are unsung.
Great comment. Thank you. Last question. Tell us about your first job.
Ah, my first job. Um, Good God. My very first job was washing dishes at a restaurant, which didn't last very long. So I won't go into more details on the fact that I discovered very quickly that there are some jobs that simply are not worth doing. I think the first significant job that I had was actually in college, and uh, again, I was part of a team. This particular case was a couple of mathematicians by the name of Wolfgang Hock and Ken Appel, professors at the University of Illinois, uh, in the mathematics department. And their particular purpose or their particular interest was basically in attempting to solve one of the oldest mathematical proofs that are out there, specifically what was called the four-color problem, which is essentially a problem, and I think it was initially by Euler. But when they laid it out, it was essentially, if you have a map, how many different colors, what is the minimum number of colors that you can use to be able to color that map such that At any given point, there is uh, no two edges. You can talk about points, but no two edges share the same color. And it was significant in that it was actually one of the first proofs that was solved by a computer back about 19, I want to say about 80, 83, 84. And it was, my particular role on it was basically entering something on the order of like 10,000 graphs into a computer, and then having that computer essentially analyze them to make sure that these were all the possible configurations you could have to be able to meet those criteria. And they did it. They did it successfully, and it was actually one of the first computer-based mathematical proofs ever created. But from my perspective, it was very, very tedious because 10,000 graphs basically meant that I was typing 44132415 enter, and hoping that I actually got everything right. And 10,000 of those in your brain kind of goes squirrely. But I think that, again, it was a team of, I guess, about 3-4 of us all together doing it. And at the time, we really didn't understand the significance of what we were doing. It was only after we'd proven it that it kind of came out, and we said, "Oh, wow, we solved it." And we solved it, in a way that no one else had ever solved a proof before. So yeah, I think it was certainly, if not necessarily the first job, it was certainly one of the earliest ones, and I think one of the most seminal in the way that I think about information now.
Well, yeah, certainly. It certainly sounds like it, that it had a great impact on you, great experience for you. So great. Thank you for sharing that. And Kurt, thank you also for being on the podcast today. How can people find you?
Excuse me. I am as I said, I'm the community editor for Data Science Central. So if you go to datasciencecentral.com and write a note to the editor, I'll be the person that gets that. I also have a LinkedIn account at LinkedIn /in/Kurt Cagle, all one word. Finally, I have a newsletter called the Cagle Report, which I try to produce weekly. I'm a little behind on that schedule, but that's also available if you go to, if you just type in the Cagle Report on LinkedIn, you should be able to find it.
Fantastic. Thank you. This is Sean Richards with the Team Engagement Podcast, where leaders of teams share their insights. For more ideas, you can go to teamengagementpodcast.com and download our Engagement Booster tip sheet. Again, that's teamengagementpodcast.com. Thanks so much for joining us today, and have a great day.